Now that we have the connection string inside app-settings.json, it's time to configure our configure services with Entity Framework. In order to configure that, we need an application DB context or a DB context class. So that class we can add inside Solution Explorer, Model, right-click, add a new class. We'll call this class application DB context. Let's add this. Now the application DB context should inherit from DB context class, which is a class inside Microsoft.Entity Framework core. After this, we need to implement the constructor, and we have to pass the DB context options to the parent class. So for constructor, we have a snippet called CTOR, and we'll press tab twice. Right here, we have to pass the DB context options, and in here, we need the application DB context. We'll call this options. This will have to pass to the base, and we'll pass the options here. This is an empty constructor, but the parameter is needed for dependency injection. Once we have that, then we need to add the book model that we added to our database. In order to add any model to the database inside the DB context, you need an entry. We will do public, and this will be DB set of type book. And let's call this property book as well. Once you add this, the last thing that you have to do is add the DB context inside startup.cs. So inside startup.cs, we have to add the DB context to our pipeline. So we'll say services.add DB context. And right here, we have to pass our class name, which is application DB context. We'll do a control dot here. And we need to pass the options with connection string. So we'll say options dot use SQL Server. We'll have to do a control dot here, and the use SQL Server we added as a NuGet package. In here, we need to pass the connection string from our app-settings.json. So for that, we can use the configuration object that we have. So we'll just say configuration dot. In here, we have the get connection string, and we need to pass the name that we used for our connection string, which is default connection. We'll copy this, and we'll pass this in a string notation like this. So this was the configuration that we had to do to include Entity Framework inside the configuration pipeline. Once you have this, all you have to do is you need to push this to database. So for that, we'll go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager. This time we'll be going to Package Manager console. And in here, the project name, it should be Booklist Razor. We'll type the command add migration, and we will add a meaningful name. What we are doing right now is add book to database or DB. We'll press enter, and what add migration will do is it will create a script that will be executed across the database. The script has been created. Right here, you see what the script is doing is it is automatically creating a table called book, and it is adding the columns ID, name, and author. It is also making sure ID nullable is false and name nullable is false. Author nullable is true because if we go, we do not have any required attribute with author. Since ID is a key, it knows that it is not nullable. In the constraint, it is also adding primary key for the table. And in the annotation, it is making sure that ID is identity column. So this is the perfect script that is needed to create the book table. Now right now, only script has been created with the add migration command. How do we actually create the database and create the table? For that, we have a command called update database. Once you hit update database, it will check if the database exists. If it does not, it will create the database, and it will also push the migrations. Once the update database command completes successfully, you can go back to your SQL Server and to the database. Let's refresh it. Right now, if you expand this and go on tables, you see we have the book table that has been created. And if you do select top 1000, you will see the 3 columns. Perfect. So with this, we created our database and we also added the book table with the properties that we wanted.